As it turns out, Ash is not ready to battle, at least not on Caitlyn's level, a fact that becomes abundantly clear moments into their match. The first hurdle the son of Brandon encounters is the format itself, as having trained for a rotation rematch, he is instead surprised to learn that Caitlyn has elected for them to have a triple battle, stating she tried to warn him and Barry that this might happen, since a good trainer is one who is able to adapt. While this does throw Ash for a loop, he does his best to channel his father, keeping calm and replying that even if this isn't what he planned for, he and his Pokemon have still worked hard to grow since their last battle, and so he will go all out to win her print. Caitlyn smiles that she cannot fault her friend's determination, vowing to battle just as intensely as she brings out her trio of Cresselia, Kirlia, and Duosion. Ash in turn brings out the trio from his last battle, Gabite, Chimchar, and Zorua, and on Derek's call, the match begins. What follows can only be referred to as a massacre, as Ash does not know how to make full use of his trio of Pokemon. At least in the tag battle tournament when he had to assume direct control of Paul's Pokemon, he was using a format he knew, and that more than anything Caitlyn could have said drives home the error of how he and Barry trained for these matches. As a result, Duosion is easily able to pick off both Chimchar and Gabite with Psychic in the opening salvo, and the only reason Zorua doesn't join them is because of a well-timed Shadow Sneak, allowing it to be smoke when the attack hits. While this does make Ash's job easier, as he can focus solely on Zorua, they are now at a steep numbers disadvantage. To make matters worse, Zorua still holds a grudge for its previous defeat, and this causes it to act recklessly, charging headlong at Duosion, and in doing so, playing directly into the Psychic type's hands. Patiently, Caitlyn waits until Zorua is almost upon Duosion before calling an attack, and at such close range, Zorua cannot react fast enough to use its smoke trick, leaving it helpless against the psionic onslaught. Like with the rest of Ash's team, one hit from the Mitosis Pokemon's powerful Psychic is enough to knock Zorua out, ending Ash's second battle with Caitlyn in defeat. However, this is not truly the end, as courtesy of that extra bit of battle experience, Duosion begins to glow, arms blossoming out of its gelatinous shell, so that when the light fades, it is as a Reuniclus. Caitlyn is of course beside herself, congratulating her starter and telling it that she's going to fetch some of its favourite poffins as a celebratory snack. However, in spite of what he just witnessed, Barry is eager to try his luck against Caitlyn, saying he hopes those poffins won't put Reuniclus off battling, since he wants to go next. Seeing that subtlety won't work with the blonde blockhead, Caitlyn explicitly urges him not to battle her yet, to take a few days at least, if not a couple of weeks to train, since they are on entirely different levels. Not wanting his friend to go through the same humiliation as him, Ash joins his voice to Caitlyn's, saying he wishes he'd refrained from battling this morning, but with his usual manic grin, Barry replies that they should know he's not the sort of guy who runs from a fight, so unless Caitlyn's forfeiting, it's time to battle. An annoyed flush coming to her cheeks, Caitlyn calls the son of Palmer a doofus if he really wants to go through with this charade, but alright, if he insists, she will face him in a rotation battle for the honour of winning a castle print. Barry's only response is to beam that this is what he's talking about, as he brings out his trio of Pokemon and affixes the disc Derek presents him with onto Chatot, while Caitlyn does the same to Reuniclus. On the Battle Butler's call, the second rematch of the day begins, and at once Barry's hyperactive brain proves itself more amenable to rotation battles than Ash was to triple battles, or perhaps he is simply heeding the words Brandon said after Ash's first loss, having the Music Note Pokemon soar towards its foe with plans to force this into a close quarters fight. Both Caitlyn and Barry know that this is not where Reuniclus shines, and so when Chatot comes close, she switches to Kirlia, who jabs at the flyer, hoping to knock it out of the air, only to realize that this was Barry's plan all along, as he swaps one bird for another, bringing Empoleon to the field, just in time to drive a super effective Metal Claw right between Kirlia's eyes. Everyone is shocked by this, even Barry, who somewhat mars the coolness of his strategy by burbling that he thought that was going to work, but he wasn't sure or anything. He then lets out an exuberant cackle as he tells his starter to bring this home with one more good hard Metal Claw, and adopting a determined expression, Empoleon readies the attack. However, when the Emperor Penguin looks down, it finds its opponent gone, having seemingly vanished into thin air, only for it to emerge a second later behind Empoleon courtesy of Shadow Sneak. Then, with the utmost seriousness, it delivers a chop to the water type's neck that renders it unconscious and ends the match in the same way as their last bout. Sighing deeply, Barry recalls his starter and begins to trudge off, his bravado truly shattered by this third consecutive loss to Caitlyn. Ash and Caitlyn both feel sympathy for the blonde, but from the sidelines, Derek's expression is an impassive one. He has been watching both Barry and Ash carefully since they arrived, and though he is impressed by their tenacity, both wanting to grow exponentially if they wish to surpass Lady Caitlyn, an outcome he imagines even Lady Caitlyn herself desires, as she is clearly going above and beyond her usual efforts to test and challenge them. Being a methodical man, Derek is not about to leave this outcome up to chance, and so when his lady and her two guests assemble in the dining hall for breakfast about an hour later, he comes with a proposition for the boys. He will mentor them both in preparation for their second rematches with Lady Caitlin. As an extra incentive, he also reminds the pair of the Battle Frontier's 3-strike rule, which states that if a challenger loses 3 times to either the minor 3 or the upper 2, they are disqualified from the challenge, to avoid wasting the brain's valuable time with endless rematches against a challenger who is not on their level. This makes Ash and Barry gulp as they suddenly regret wasting their second shots this morning. However, with a look of grim determination, Derek assures them that if they enter into his tutelage and do exactly as he says, they will prevail in the next battles, as his methods never fail to get results. Something about the way in which the battle butler speaks of his methods scares the young challengers almost as much as the thought of losing, though this is allayed somewhat as Caitlin vouches for the man, calling him an excellent battle mentor, since it was actually him who taught her and Tobias how to battle. Humbly, Derek replies that the lady of the castle is too generous. They both possessed immense natural talent. All he did was provide a guiding hand. Nonetheless, this does give the boys some hope, and so after tucking into their sumptuous breakfasts, they follow Derek out of the dining room, ready to begin their training. However, to their surprise, the battle butler does not lead them into the training room, but instead into the servants' quarters, where he fetches a pair of uniforms very similar to his own, before handing them to the boys. Curiously, Ash asks what these are for, to which Derek placidly replies that surely he did not think he would simply be able to drop everything and devote all his time to training, did he? No, he is Lady Caitlin's butler, a full-time job that requires him to work near constantly. If he is to be taking any time off to assist Ash and Barry, they along with their Pokemon must first help him complete the work he would otherwise be doing during that time, with the understanding being that the more of his work they're able to complete each day, the more time he can devote to their training in the evening. Barry is none too happy about this deal, feeling it is counterintuitive to wear himself and his Pokemon out while also halving their training time, but Ash at least can see the fairness of this deal, accepting the terms, which in turn makes Barry give in, as he doesn't want his rival to be the only one receiving special training. Once the boys are dressed in their under-butler uniforms, Derek assigns them their first task for the day. Barry will be doing some ironing, while Ash will be assisting in the kitchen making poffins for Lady Caitlin's Pokemon. Both prove to be arduous tasks, with Barry being confronted by a mountain of linens taller than he is, while Ash is forced to only memorize several recipes simultaneously, as each of Caitlin's Pokemon like a different kind of poffin, but also run from one end of the kitchen to the other, assisting the cooks as they call his name. Thankfully, their Pokemon are there to help them, with Shelgon holding an incinerate attack inside itself to serve as a living iron, while Chimchar's acrobatic abilities are very useful for fetching ingredients from shelves too high for Ash to reach. After a couple of hours of this, Derek comes by to inspect the boys' work, and upon deeming it satisfactory for a first day on the job, reassigns them to new tasks, this time giving Barry and his chatot the job of dusting all the portraits in the gallery, while Ash and Goodbye are told to weed the flower garden. This quickly becomes a pattern, with Ash and Barry being given a new job every few hours, unaware of the fact that each one is in some way or another chosen to encourage them to seek help from a Pokemon they intend to use in their rematches with Caitlin. To ensure that these exercises are beneficial in helping both Pokemon and trainer grow, Derek is relentless with their workforce, and before long, Ash and Barry are forced to wonder if the battle butler might have some of his mistress's psychic powers, as he seems to have a sixth sense for if either of them are slacking, even for a second, with him seemingly materializing behind them, and in a placid voice, asking if they're enjoying their break, or else insinuating that perhaps they do not wish to receive his training after all. Nonetheless, when night has fallen, and the boys are allowed to stop their chores for the day, Derek praises their efforts, stating that they have earned several hours of his time, before urging them to join Lady Caitlin for dinner, and meet him in the training room when they are done. After all their hard work, no dinner has ever tasted so good, with both boys digging in heartily, to the point where Caitlin scolds them for eating like a pair of crazed munchlaxes. Through a full mouth, Barry tells his companion there's no time to slow down, since they have to get down to training, and good to their word, the moment their plates are cleared of food, both Ash and Barry are gone, their eyes set squarely on the training room. As promised, Derek is waiting for them, and without preamble he calls for Barry to step up and bring out his Pokemon, since they're going to start with triple battle practice. It seems that Derek's approach to training is very similar to his approach to battling, as he has the boys practice different styles of battle in short intense bursts before having them move on to something new before they can get complacent. This forces them to remain on their toes at all times, always thinking, as Derek's keen eyes pierce through them, dissecting every move and giving instruction on how to improve it. It is exhausting work, but clearly beneficial, as when Derek calls a halt to the evening's training, both Ash and Barry feel as though they have learned so much they could not have on their own. Derek, for his part, is pleased to see the boys are receptive to his methods, and so urges them to head up to bed, since first thing after breakfast tomorrow, they will be required to report to him for more chores if they wish to receive more training like tonight's. Even with the fatigue the boys feel, neither even consider declining the offer, both promising to work just as hard tomorrow and every day that follows, so long as they get to have more training sessions like this. As a result, this becomes the new normal in the Battle Castle, with Ash and Barry rising early each morning to work as under butlers by day, then training late into the night with Derek. Caitlin, for her part, is pleased to see how dedicated her friends are to their goal of beating her, though this does not mean she won't mess with them just a little, finding extra special joy in bossing Barry around and hearing him begrudgingly refer to her as Lady Caitlin at Derek's insistence. In fact, both boys have begun to put a lot of stock in what Derek says, having developed a great deal of respect for the Battle Butler during their time at the Battle Castle, not only because of how strong he is, but also the immense workload he usually has to carry out by himself. Subsequently, they spare no effort in their attempts to assist him, getting better at finding ways to have their Pokemon help them in their tasks, just as Derek hoped they would. Derek in turn repays this devotion by raising the intensity of their nightly training, having Houndoom, Staraptor, and Empoleon push Ash and Barry's Pokemon to their very limits. From this, a fierce, albeit one-sided, rivalry develops between Barry's Empoleon and Derek's. Barry's has not forgotten the pain of its defeat during their first encounter, and since it is unable to set right the slight to its pride it feels Caitlin's Kirlia has inflicted upon it through its 3 back-to-back losses, it works tirelessly to prove itself a match to its counterpart at least. However, try as it might, the younger Empoleon cannot close the seemingly endless chasm of power between them, falling easily in every spar, and though Derek does notice the improvements it makes each time, Empoleon itself cannot, quickly growing despondent like it did after their first battle, since if it can't even beat Derek's ace, how is it going to beat the partner of the woman he serves? This self-doubt is infectious, as the next morning Barry's usual zeal is noticeably lacking, with him having reached a similar conclusion to his starter. Ash and Caitlin both express concern at this sight, but Derek in his insightful way simply tells the boy to meet him in the kitchen when he is done eating, and to bring Empoleon, since they have work to do. A few minutes later, Boy and Bird arrive as bid, and to their surprise, find the place deserted aside from Derek and a mountain of pots, plates, and utensils all smeared with various foodstuffs. In a calm voice, the Battle Butler tells them that he is only assigning them one task today: clean each and every one of them. If they can achieve this before nightfall, then they can do with the excess time whatever they please, a prospect Barry finds highly enticing, and so at Derek's instruction to start, the pair get to work. At once, Barry begins filling the twin sinks with hot and cold water, while Empoleon gargles dish detergent, so that its ensuing bubble beam will have a cleaning effect. Their unspoken plan, a simple one. Barry will scrub the dirty equipment in the hot sink to get the gunk off, then will pass it off to Empoleon, whose soapy bubbles will clear away the germs, before rinsing in the cold sink and laying neatly on the other side. By creating this system, the pair are able to work perfectly in tandem, focusing on their own jobs while having total faith in their partner to do theirs. As a result, they make excellent time, having cleaned nearly 2/3 of the plates when the cooks come in to start preparing lunch. Kindly, a few of the kitchen staff offer to help with the cleaning, but in a tone that will brook no argument, Derek, who has been watching this whole time, orders them to stay back, as this is Barry and Empoleon's task. Finally, around 2 p.m, roughly 6 hours after starting, the final spotless plate is stacked back in the cupboard, and it is only when this has been done that Derek speaks directly to the boy and his Pokemon again. Curiously, he asks if they've figured out why he gave them this task. In a soft voice, Barry replies that he thinks he has. He wanted to remind them that even if a job seems impossible at the outset, with enough hard work and faith in each other, they can get through it. Smiling, Derek replies that he could not have phrased it better himself, before placing a hand on both Barry and Empoleon's shoulders, and telling them that they may not be on the level of him and his Empoleon just yet, but he has every confidence that if they keep working as hard as they have been, there will come a day, likely sooner than they expect, where they will surpass him and even Lady Caitlin. This makes the blonde boy smile, and seeing this, Derek tells him to go rest up, since they still have training later, and from now on, he's going to stop holding back. Meanwhile, Ash also faces his own challenges, though his are to do with his Zorua. Being a willful and hot-headed creature, the spiteful fox only seems to listen to him when it can see benefit to itself, otherwise it acts more as a free agent. While this isn't much of an issue when battling, since they both want to be strong enough to defeat Caitlin, Ash worries what it means for their partnership, as unlike the others, it is the least inclined to help him out with the task Derek assigns them, often wandering off and leaving him to do the chores by himself. Thankfully, just like with Barry, Derek has a solution, telling Ash how Lady Caitlin was a lot like this Zorua during her younger days, often acting out when he was left to care for her and Master Tobias while their parents were away. Curiously, Ash asks how Derek remedied this, with the Battle Butler replying that he simply had to show Lady Caitlin that he was there for her, since her anger was not to do with him at all, but rather her own feelings of being abandoned. When she saw that there was someone who would steadfastly stay by her side no matter what she threw at him, a lot of her misbehavior mellowed. A sad look then crosses Ash's face, as he says that he bet Zorua feels the same way. Since he found it in a Pokeball, it clearly had a trainer before him, but for some reason they locked it away at the bottom of the Slacian ruins for hundreds of years. He can't imagine how much that would hurt, not to mention being alone for so long. No wonder it doesn't want to form a bond with another human. Nodding sagely, Derek states that he thinks the boy has gotten to the bottom of the issue, though now the question is how he intends to resolve it. However, instead of looking discouraged, Ash replies that he knows just what to do for bringing out Zorua. As usual, the spiteful fox's first instinct upon being released is to look around for who it is meant to be battling, and when it sees that this is not a fight, it flashes a smirk, then turns on its heel to walk away. But here Ash stops it, saying that if it doesn't mind, he'd actually like for it to hang out with him for a while, outside its Pokeball. This gives the white and red canid pause, but having nothing better to do, it gives a haughty shrug then moves back to the boy's side as he leans down to pet it with a wide smile on his face. Wanting to help with this bonding, Derek specifically chooses jobs for Ash that fall within Zorua's skill set, making it the natural choice to help him. At first, Zorua remains disinterested, wanting to do its own thing, but Ash is persistent with his encouragement, trying to win it over to the idea that they will have fun if they work together, and that it would mean a lot to him. Though aloof, Zorua is not heartless, and so eventually relents, agreeing to assist the boy so long as he remains effusive in his praise. Luckily, in this area he is more like his mother than his stern father, meaning he is able to provide the fox with the level of affection it desires. As a result, Zorua does begin to help Ash outside of battle, be it through using its smoke trick to bring him cleaning implements faster than he can cross the room to get them, or using its powerful slash attack to chop vegetables while working in the kitchen. And to its surprise, it does start having fun like Ash said it would, its cackles being earned not through cruel pranks like it used to, but from innocent, often light-hearted things, like the time Ash mixed the poffin batter too hard, resulting in some of it spraying back in his face, or when Zorua was traveling in its smoke form while Derek was vacuuming and accidentally got sucked up. This lightening up has a secondary benefit for the spiteful fox, that being that it steadily becomes less spiteful and angry, allowing it to become a better teammate with Chimchar and Gabite when they do triple battle practice together. This delights Ash and Derek both, with the raven-haired boy thanking his mentor for all he's done in helping him gain Zorua's trust. However, here Derek stops him, reminding the boy that trust is not a prize, something to be won then displayed forevermore. It is a journey, a never-ending promise between both parties that they will continually demonstrate their loyalty to one another. Nodding, Ash promises to remember this, then turning his smile to his Pokemon friends, goes over to join them and celebrate their hard work and their bond. For the next few weeks, things continue in this fashion, with Ash and Barry both working towards bettering themselves just as much as their Pokemon, though one day something comes along to break their routine, that being a summons to the throne room from Caitlin. This is the first time she has actually called for them in their roles as Lady of the Castle and under butlers, and so setting off at once, they find their friend looking worried, though the set of her jaw is more akin to the concentration she applies when using her psychic powers. Worriedly, Ash asks what she needs from them, and in a tired voice, she tells her friends that she needs them to fetch her a Dawnstone. Curiously, Barry asks why she wants that, with Caitlin explaining it's for her Kirlia. Kirlia always wanted to evolve into a Gallade when the time came, but recently, its body's been trying to force it to evolve into Gardevoir against its will. In order to prevent that from happening, it needs the Dawnstone as soon as possible to facilitate the alternate evolution. She would go and get it herself, but she needs to remain behind to help her little friend resist the change, since with each attempt at evolution, it requires a bit more psychic fortitude to fight it off. Looking grim at the thought of a Pokemon being forced to evolve into something it doesn't want to, Ash and Barry both vow to retrieve the stone as quick as they can, while Derek helpfully adds that he has already contacted a broker of rare items and secured the purchase of the stone. The boys just have to go and pick it up from him at Lake Verity. Since the Battle Castle is located on a small island between Full Moon Island and Iron Island, the quickest route to Lake Verity is via Canalave City. From there, Caitlin advises them to head east to Jubilife, then south to Sandgem, before turning back west towards the lake. However, Barry in his usual way has other ideas, suggesting that the most efficient option would be to simply head south from Canalave until they hit Lake Verity, since that way they could cut out all the needless backtracking and get Kirlia what it needs sooner. Ash isn't so sure, pointing out that if they get lost, they could wind up delayed until it's too late late to prevent Kirlia's evolution, but with a hint of mania to his voice, Barry assures his friend that he grew up around Lake Verity, so they won't get lost. He promises. Motivated by a desire to help a Pokemon in need, Ash somewhat reluctantly accepts Barry's plan, and so when their boat pulls into the harbor, they make a beeline south, ignoring the signposted route in favor of the dense trees. As this area was never planned for human traversal, there is no path, and in fact the ground is overgrown with roots and plants that tangle around the boys' ankles, almost as if they're intentionally trying to trip them up. Thankfully, there is one thing Ash and Barry have learned from their time as under butlers. It is how to apply their Pokemon's abilities for more than just battle, with Ash calling forth Chimchar to blaze them a trail with Flame Wheel, while Barry has Empoleon put out the flames as soon as they've cut a path, so they don't accidentally start a forest fire. This combo move is surprisingly effective, allowing them to travel at a pace only marginally slower than if they were moving through a paved road. As a result, they do manage to make better time than if they had taken the planned route, reaching the northernmost bank of Lake Verity midway through the second day of their trek. Knowing that their contact will likely be on the southern bank, Barry has Empoleon provide them with assistance once more, using Aquajet to carry them across the lake at high speeds, albeit at the cost of some rather soaked socks. It seems as though everything is going better than planned, with both Ash and Barry feeling hopeful they really will be able to get the Dawnstone back to Caitlin and Kirlia ahead of schedule. That is until Barry falls into the lake. It is such a sudden thing that for a moment Ash can hardly comprehend it. 1 second his friend is standing beside him on Empoleon's back, the next he is clutching his head and tumbling sideways into the water. Without thought, Ash dives after Barry, hitting the water's surface hard and plunging deeper into the inky depths. Thankfully, there was such a short span of time between their dives that Barry is still visible, his eyes having gone glassy and his mouth vacantly agape. Worrying what this might mean, Ash kicks as hard as he can, gaining on Barry and grabbing hold of his wrist when he is within range. Mercifully, this seems to jolt Barry out of his stupor, allowing the boys to make for the surface together, where Empoleon is waiting. Still concerned for his friend, Ash goes to ask what happened, but before he can, he is cut off by a question from Barry. "Did you see it?" The urgency with which the blonde boy says this startles Ash almost as much as the fall, causing him to ask what Barry means, while frantically racking his brain for anything of note that might explain the other boy's strange behavior. Still in that urgent tone, Barry responds that right before he fell, he saw a hazy silhouette floating above the lake, but more importantly, he saw his shadow on the water, and it was the same shape as one of the twin-tailed creatures depicted in the Celestic ruins. As soon as he saw it, he felt that same vertigo that he, Ash, and Caitlin all experienced when they laid eyes on the mural, and the next thing he knew, he was falling. This answer sets a frown on Ash's face, giving it a stern countenance very much like his father's, as he tells his friend that he doesn't think this is a coincidence, since when he and his dad first landed at Lake Valor, he had a similar episode, though he doesn't remember seeing any silhouettes or shadows, nor did he feel anything just now. Either way, they'll have to be very careful, since they can't afford to lose themselves again. Nodding, Barry clambers once more into Empoleon's back, then helps Ash to do the same a moment later. As an extra precaution, both hold on to the Emperor Penguin for the remainder of the trip across the lake, but thankfully there are no more incidents, allowing them to reach the southern bank in a matter of minutes. To their surprise, someone is already camping here, and with hope that it might be the Stonebroker, the boys decide to approach, announcing their presence and requesting that if the camper is who they think, to please reveal themselves. However, here is where they receive the real surprise, as with a boisterous bellow, the Stonebroker does show himself, and he is someone they know, Peony. Locking eyes with the youths, Peony asks if they're the ones that Derek guy sent to pick up the Dawnstone, and with matching smiles and nods, the boys explain that they are, since it's for Caitlin's Kirlia. This makes Peony smile as well, though this is hardly an achievement, as the man is seldom serious. But all the same, he calls them good lads for trekking all the way out here for a mate, before tossing the stone to Ash and telling him that he'll mention seeing him to Brandon when they meet up. This piques Ash's curiosity, with him asking the Galarian when he and his father are reuniting, to which Peony says that he's actually going to start heading up to Snow Point now, since he only stopped off here to see if he could catch a gander at the legendary Lake Guardian. Turning to each other, it is clear that Ash and Barry are both thinking the same thing, and catching the look in their eyes, Peony asks what's the matter. Figuring they can trust Brandon's old friend, Ash begins to explain their recent encounter with the twin-tailed shadow, though instead of looking concerned like they did, this story makes Peony's eyes light up until he can barely contain his excitement. Then with an exuberant exhale of steam through his nostrils, he declares that Barry has been chosen by the legendary Pokemon Mesprit. Cocking his head, Barry asks what exactly he's been chosen for, but with a giddy shrug, the Galarian replies that he has no idea, though now that he knows this, they've got to have a battle, since it'll almost be as good as battling Mesprit itself. This gets Barry all fired up as he calls for Empoleon to help him out, but with a hint of stress to his voice, Ash reminds his companion of the whole reason they came here in the first place. Still with that wild-eyed grin, Barry reassures Ash that he's worrying too much. They're way ahead of schedule, so a quick battle won't hurt, though just to be certain, they'll just make it a one-on-one. Seeing as how he doesn't have much of a choice, with Empoleon being his ride home, Ash acquiesces, stepping between them and agreeing to be the ref, while Barry and Peony call forth Empoleon and Copperaja respectively. Like his daughter, Peony decides to open the match offensively, having Copperaja charge straight at its target with high horsepower. But after weeks of fast-paced chores to keep up with Derek's schedule, Barry's reflexes have finally been honed enough to catch up with his motor mouth, allowing him to order an effective counter in the form of an Aqua Jet. At once, Empoleon summons the water of Lake Verity to cocoon it, taking off at high speeds and slamming into Copperaja with equal force to its high horsepower, sending both Pokemon back. Unfortunately, while this lessens the strength of the Steel-type's attack, it is still super effective on Empoleon, causing it to wince. But even still, Barry stays strong, and after their lesson from Derek, Empoleon wills itself to do the same. Then on Barry's cry begins firing bubble beams, hoping to ward off the next high horsepower without damaging itself. While this is a good idea in theory, it fails to take into account one minor detail, that in a clash between a stream of bubbles and a half-ton metal elephant moving at speed, the bubbles will burst in an instant. This leaves poor Empoleon exposed, but refusing to go down without a fight, Barry calls on his old faithful, the move that saved him against Thornton, Argenta, Dahlia, and even almost let him beat Caitlyn in their first battle, Metal Claw. Suddenly, Empoleon's bladed wings flash silver, and as it thrusts them forward to stop the charging Copperaja, the Copperderm Pokemon finds itself driven to a standstill. No one can believe their eyes, least of all Barry, but never want to miss an opportunity, the boisterous boy commands the star to keep using Metal Claw to push Copperaja back. Setting its jaw, Empoleon begins thrusting its arms once more, and to the surprise of everyone, this manages to drive the elephant backwards, plowing deep trenches in the ground as it is pushed inch by inch towards the lake bank. Throughout this exchange, Peony is stunned, unable to utter more than a startled "blimey." But when the very real danger of the lake water finally does make its way through his head, the Galarian grins that Barry's quite a fine young battler, and he should be very proud that he's forced him to use his ace in the hole, but he's afraid he's got to end it here. He then calls for a superpower, and at once, a pale blue aura shines around Copperaja as it stamps its feet, ready to charge once more. Gritting his teeth, Barry urges his partner to try Metal Claw one more time, hoping if it worked once, it can work again. However, this is a vain hope, as when the bladed wing strikes the blue aura, it simply bounces off, leaving Empoleon wide open. What follows is an ugly sight, as the 4 steel beams that Copperaja calls legs trample the Emperor Penguin into the dirt, and as the dust settles, it comes as a surprise to no one that Empoleon is unable to battle. Letting out a sad sigh, Barry recalls his starter, thanking it for doing its best, though when Peony approaches him, it is with nothing but praise, calling that a real heart-pounder of a match. Shaking his head, Barry replies that it seemed pretty one-sided to him, but with a laugh, Peony retorts that he completely disagrees. In fact, if Empoleon had upgraded its Metal Claw to Steel Wing, he believes the outcome would have been in Barry's favor. This shocks the blonde boy, who asks if the former Galarian champ means it, to which Peony genuinely replies that he does, even offering to teach Empoleon how to turn its Metal Claw into Steel Wing if it wants. However, here Ash has to put his foot down, reminding Barry of Kirlia, and this time the son of Palmer concedes, promising to learn the move from Peony next time they meet. Grinning that the boys really are loyal friends, the legend hunter says that in that case, he'll just jot down the basics and hopefully that'll be enough to get Barry started. A few moments later, the boys are once more on Empoleon's back, the Dawnstone clutch in Ash's hand, and a scribbled note from Peony and Barry's. Thankfully, having already cut their path, the return trip is even shorter, meaning that by the evening of their 3rd day after leaving the battle castle, Ash and Barry step foot on the island once more, and rush to present Caitlyn with the stone, desperately hoping that it is not too late. Mercifully, when they arrive in the throne room, Kirlia is still in the form they left it, though it is clear that it is experiencing considerable fatigue, with the same being true of Caitlyn, whose brow is durred with sweat, as she focuses on suppressing a white glow as it abruptly appears around her friend. Upon seeing Ash and Barry, she hastily urges them to give her the Dawnstone, and without hesitation, Ash lobs the Azure Rock, with Caitlyn psychically catching it and floating it over to Kirlia. As soon as the Dawnstone touches Kirlia, its light fades, or rather is transferred into the Emotion Pokemon, who begins to glow much brighter than it had a moment ago. This time Caitlyn does not attempt to suppress the evolution, and so everyone bears witness as Kirlia grows to more than twice its previous size, its hair and tutu folding in on themselves, while wicked-looking blades burst from its elbows. It is an awe-inspiring sight, and when the light finally fades, Caitlyn wraps her arms around Gallade, congratulating it on its chosen evolution. Ash and Barry also add their praises, though they are both smart enough to recognize that this means their next battle with Caitlyn will be much harder now that Glade, like Reuniclus, is in its final form. Nonetheless, neither have an ounce of regret for helping it, instead focusing on what they can control, that being themselves, and the effort they put into their training. As a result, they continue to work as under-butlers for several more weeks, so they can keep working with Derek in the evenings. Following the encounter with Peony, Barry's main focus becomes upgrading Metal Claw to Steel Wing, while Ash keeps building the camaraderie between his trio of battlers now that Zorua has opened up. As usual, Derek is an invaluable aid in these goals, adapting his training methods to match their new goals, with him doing more one-on-one battling with Barry, often Empoleon versus Empoleon so he can model Steel Wing, while with Ash he does more triple battles, to give Zorua, Chimchar and Gabite every opportunity to work together and tighten their bond. But eventually, there comes a point where Derek must call a stop to the training, and so roughly 2 months after they became his apprentices, Derek instructs the boys to meet him not in the basement training room, but up on the battle castle's roof. Doing as they're told, Ash and Barry head up to this odd meeting place after they finish work that evening, to find Derek staring pensively up at the moon. When he sees them, he beckons them over, informing them that their training and subsequently their tenure working here are at an end. Worriedly, Ash asks if they've done something to displease him, but with a faint smile the battle butler replies that it is quite the opposite. He is very proud of them both, but he's afraid he has nothing left to teach them, so all that remains is for them to challenge Lady Caitlyn one last time. Ash isn't quite sure what to say to this, to the man who taught him so much, with him ultimately settling on a grateful handshake to thank him for everything he's done. Barry, however, has no such issue, hopping up and down as he proudly yells to the heavens that he and his buddies are going to use all Derek's taught them to kick Caitlyn's butt. From behind them, a mildly amused voice asks if that is so, and when the three men turn, it is to see Caitlyn swanning towards them, her trio of Pokemon by her side. Still riding the high of Derek's praises, Barry grins that it sure is, to which Caitlyn tells him that if he's so sure, why not have their match right here, right now? Smile only growing, the blonde boy replies that she took the words right out of his mouth, heading to one side of the rooftop, while Caitlyn moves to the other, ready to engage in a moonlight duel for the sake of Barry's dream. Raising a hand, Caitlyn telekinetically summons 2 cases containing the equipment for the rotation battle, surprising Barry a little that she chose not to switch formats again. However, his recent experiences have allowed him to find his inner steel, and so this does not shake him, as he chooses Chatot to be his first battler, while Caitlyn picks Reuniclus. Like with their last match, Barry takes the first move, having Chatot rush in, and for a moment, the lady of the castle worries that maybe her friend hasn't learned as much as she'd hoped, only to realize this is a feint, when instead of striking, Barry has Chatot fly upwards. Briefly, Caitlyn wonders what that idiot is planning, only for it to be revealed a moment later when he turns the dial on his rotation remote, swapping Chatot for Shogun in midair. For one glorious moment, Shogun gets to experience the euphoria of flight its kind has long dreamed of, but then gravity comes back into effect, sending the weighty dragon type hurtling downwards with the intent of crushing Reuniclus flat. However, this does little to worry Caitlyn, who has her psychic type use its telekinetic powers to freeze Shogun in place, suspended over Reuniclus's head, so near, yet so far from achieving its goal. Looking Barry in the eye, Caitlyn tells her friend and challenger as much, but with unmistakable gloating in his tone, Barry retorts that everything's going exactly to plan. He then calls for an incinerate, and after charging the attack for a moment like it learned during their time ironing, Shogun belches a fireball which strikes Reuniclus directly, causing it to wobble in pain as it is suddenly boiled in its own amniotic fluid. This sneaky trick irritates Caitlyn, but thinking fast, she swaps her starter for Glade, and this allows Shogun to fall once more, but with its momentum gone, the endurance Pokemon is easily caught on the tip of Glade's bladed hand. Though Glade has lost the fairy typing, this does not mean it cannot deal considerable damage to Shogun, with it swiftly executing a close combat to slam its other blade hand into the dragon's hidden face, making it squeal in pain as it is sent skipping across the stone rooftop like a stone across water. Knowing how bad this could be if Shogun hits the parapet at this speed, Barry swaps back in Chatot, with the bird using Shogun's flight to pick up speed as it doubles back, ready for round 2. This time Barry does intend to have Chatot fight, calling for a chatter, and at once, Barry's own magnified voice comes out of Chatot's mouth, with him teasing that he's gonna beat Caitlyn, before doing an unflattering impersonation of the Frontier Brain. This does massive damage to Glade as a flying type attack, but more than that, it infuriates Caitlyn, who yells for the Blade Pokemon to charge in and knock that bird out of the sky with a Psycho Cut. The sight of Caitlyn flustered makes Barry grin, as this is the other key lesson he took away from his time with Derek. The wrong mindset can be detrimental both in battle and out of it. Since realizing that, he has known that it would play a big role in his battle with Caitlyn, because if there's one thing he's good at, it's getting under the girl's skin. Now that Caitlyn is off kilter, Barry feels confident to move into the endgame stage of his strategy, and so as Gallade gets close enough to take a swipe at Chatot, Barry flicks the rotation remote once more, bringing Empoleon onto the field. Having dreamed of this moment as much as Barry has, the Emperor Penguin doesn't need a command, instead readying a Steel Wing and plunging it directly into Glade's chest, just as the Psychic Swordsman does the same to it with Psycho Cut. This simultaneous strike causes electricity to crackle around the pair, and for a moment, everyone wonders if this is the force of their rivalry made manifest. But as the warriors break apart, it becomes clear that the cause is nothing so philosophical. Empoleon and Gallade have simply struck each other's rotation discs, destroying them and ensuring that for better or worse, the match will be decided by them. Taking their fighting stances, the two combatants eye each other cautiously, both well aware of the power the other possesses. Then on their trainer's command, they leap, Steel Wing clashing with close combat in a flurry of blows. At first, the pair seemed to be on par with each other, needing to use both hands just to keep the other at bay. But while Empoleon was kept back to preserve its stamina for this fight, Gallade has already taken a super effective blow from Chatot, and this shows as it begins to slow, allowing the Emperor Pokemon to get in a few good hits, which thanks to a double defense drop from both close combats, deals considerable damage. With each of these, the battle steadily turns more in Empoleon's favor, until finally the water type is able to break through Glade's defenses entirely and level a Steel Wing against its throat. The Emperor Penguin then barks at its foe to yield, though instead of looking beaten, the Psychic Fighter and its trainer both get a glint in their eye. A moment later, Gallade is gone, having seemingly vanished into thin air, but Barry and Empoleon know what this is, and as the Psychic Swordsman suddenly materializes out of Empoleon's shadow, ready to strike it from behind and claim victory again, the Water Steel type deftly thrusts its bladed flipper back, slicing Gallade diagonally from hip to shoulder. Turning at last, Empoleon sees that Gallade is finally vanquished, and as the Blade Pokemon falls forward, the Emperor Penguin catches it, propping it up and ensuring that the face of a worthy rival is not stained with the dust of the ground. From the sideline, Derek calls an end to the battle, naming Barry the victor and declaring that he has won himself a castle print. This makes Barry jump for joy as he declares that he and his Pokemon are the best in all the world, while with a smile, Caitlyn approaches him, laying a hand on his arm and congratulating him on a well-earned victory. Due to Gallade having been rendered unconscious and Reuniclus not being in much of a fighting state either after the whole boiling incident, it is decided that Ash will get his rematch in the morning. The son of Brandon has no problem with this, and so retires to bed soon after, though try as he might, sleep eludes him. Truthfully, he isn't sure if this is excitement, fear, or a mix of both that keeps him awake, but seeing as he is in this position, Ash decides to take a walk with his Pokemon. The castle grounds are even more beautiful by moonlight, and as he passes the flower garden, Ash reminisces with Gabite about all the effort they had to put into weeding it during their first day working for Derek. Though there is a bit of a chill in the air this far north, Chimchar's tail flame keeps them all warm, and when they find a comfortable patch of grass to lie on and watch the stars, the team all gather around Ash. With Meltan resting on his shoulder as per usual, Gabite and Chimchar stretching out on either side of him, and Zorua nestling into his stomach, content to just lie there, not even bothering to look up. Ash doesn't know at what point he falls asleep, though what feels like a moment later, he is being shaken awake by Derek, who urges him to wake up, as Lady Caitlyn is waiting for him in the throne room. Rising to his feet, Ash thanks the battle butler, then after dusting grass and morning dew from his clothes, heads inside, his team in tow. As Derek had said, Caitlyn is indeed waiting, and when she sees him, she asks if he's ready for their match. Nodding, Ash replies that he is, and when Caitlyn explains that it will be a triple battle, he calls forth Chimchar, Gabite, and Zorua to stand by his side. As expected, Caitlyn's team are the same trio she has used all along, though there is fire in their eyes now, as they clearly wish to make up for last night's loss by claiming decisive victory against these challengers. Noticing this, Ash makes a mental note to be very careful, and when Derek tells them to start, Ash orders his Pokemon to stay close and watch each other's backs, but not to get too close, having seen the result of that from Barry's triple battle against Caitlyn. This makes Caitlyn frown a little, as she suggests that if Ash isn't ready for this, they can have the match another time, since it's hardly fair or fun for her to battle him when he's already his own head. However, with a smile, Ash tells Caitlyn that he's fine, and more than that, he's eager to battle her today. Shrugging at him to have it his way then, Caitlyn allows Ash to have the first move, and the son of Brandon does not squander the opportunity, calling for a snarl. At once, all three of Caitlyn's Pokemon grow increasingly distressed, as a growling sound fills the high hall, with even Caitlyn wincing a bit as the sound reverberates through the room. In a voice that is one part impressed and one part uncomfortable, the young Frontier Brand acknowledges that Derek must have taught him that trick, since it's the same one his Houndoom used to dampen her psychic powers outside Hearthome. Without hesitation, Ash confirms this, this, admitting that while he's sorry to cause her discomfort, he will attempt to end this quickly, as he tells his team to charge in while the psychic types are too distracted to channel their abilities. Acting in unison, Chimchar, Gabite, and Zorua burst forward, readying their next attack, so that when they reach their foes, they can strike them immediately with Flame Wheel for Reuniclus, Bulldoze for Gallade, and that strange freezing move for Kirlia. Each hit lands perfectly, with Reuniclus warbling at being burned, while Gallade lets out a grunt of pain as it is sent skidding back. Only Kirlia remains silent, though this is because it has been frozen solid, just as Ash had hoped. Now if his luck holds, his team of 3 can whittle down the other 2 before they turn their attention to taking the legend together. However, Caitlyn is not about to simply let Ash claim her print, and so tells Reuniclus to blow them all away with Psychic. Hastily, Ash tries to have his team spread out to mitigate the damage, but this effort is for naught, as when the Psychic Pulse shoots outwards, the trio of Pokemon are all swept up in it and sent flying back. Crashing down in a huddled mass, it looks as though Ash's team might have all fainted, but before Derek can call the match, the pile stirs, with the 3 teammates all helping each other back to their feet, though it's plain to see that this salvo did a lot of damage. On Derek's order, the match resumes, and not wanting to waste any time, Ash tells Zorua to use Snarl once more, while ordering Chimchar and Gallade to use Dig on Reuniclus. As the snarling that started the match fills the throne room once more, the dragon and monkey begin to burrow, their tunnels crossing and weaving, to make it all but impossible for Caitlyn to tell which Pokemon is in which tunnel. This is a problem, as Caitlyn knows that Zorua is not the only one with a super effective move against her Reuniclus, and unless she knows which side the danger is coming from, she can't give the accurate command to block it. Not to mention that with that baneful snarling, Reuniclus might not be able to hear her even if she can figure it out. Caitlyn has to admit that Ash has made a pretty good strategy, truly a credit to all his hard work, but unfortunately for him, she didn't get her Frontier Brain title from a cereal box, and so quickly deduces a way to overcome her opponent. Turning first to Reuniclus, she tells it to run, figuring that her starter can at least outspeed Ash's Pokemon for a short time, while to Gallade she gives a simple order: silence Zorua's snarling, and bring this match back under their control. Nodding their understanding, the 2 Psychic types take off, with Reuniclus flirting away from the approaching tunnels, while Gallade charges forward, blade hands raised to strike down the spiteful fox. However, to do so, it must first pass over one of the many crisscrossing tunnels Gabite and Chimchar have dug, and as it soon learns, this is a costly mistake. The moment the Psychic Fighter's foot touches the disturbed ground, a hand shoots out to grab it, or rather a small simian paw. Looking down, Gallade sees that Chimchar has wrapped its hand around its ankle, and appears to be trying to pull it down into the hole. However, being a much smaller creature, this is hardly an issue, as one good Psycho Cut should deal with this. At least, that is what Gallade thinks, until a second figure emerges, wrapping its scaly taloned claw around the other ankle. It is only now that Caitlyn realizes that neither of the tunnels are moving towards the still fleeing Reuniclus, though before she can come up with a counter strategy, Gallade is pulled underground. Briefly, there is the sound of scuffling as the Psychic Swordsman attempts to break free of its captors, but having been cut off from its allies and its trainer, it is at a steep disadvantage compared to the honed teamwork of Gabite and Chimchar, who have been battling partners dating all the way back to the tag tournament. Unfortunately for Gallade, the difference between the tag tournament and this match is that it's not going to clinch an easy victory for Caitlyn, as a moment later is expelled from the underground, being sent flying backwards into Reuniclus, so fast that the multiplying Pokemon isn't even able to protect itself. As the pair try to right themselves, with Gallade getting to its feet, and Reuniclus gathering up all the splattered amniotic fluid from that impact, Chimchar and Gabite burst from the tunnel as well, though instead of rushing their opponents, they attack from afar, launching a tandem Dragon Breath and Flamethrower combo. Something in the draconic energy is clearly flammable, as when the 2 attacks strike Gallade and Reuniclus, a wave of purple and red flames billow out, bathing the entirety of Caitlyn's side of the field. Urgently, she cries for her Pokemon, but receives no response, and so it comes as little shock that when the dragon fire dies down a bit, it reveals the 2 Psychic types slumped against each other, unconscious. Cheering, Ash congratulates his Pokemon, while on the field, Gabite and Chimchar high-five before running over to share their jubilation with Zorua. However, it seems that they will never get that chance, as before they can even take 2 steps, the Drake and Ape find themselves suspended in place. Looking around for the cause, Ash witnesses a new figure emerge from the purple and red flames, one he had almost forgotten, Kirlia, freed from its frozen prison. For something so beautiful, it is amazing how menacing the lunar Pokemon looks in this moment, and as Ash learns, its majesty is nothing compared to its power. With an ethereal core, Kirlia slams Chimchar and Gabite together, and with another, it breaks them apart, sending them soaring into opposite walls where they make matching craters. Now it is Ash's turn to call out for his friends, but just as with Caitlyn, when the dust settles, he sees that both his Pokemon are unable to battle. Recalling them, he gives his most heartfelt thanks for helping him get this far. Then, Then, with new determination in his eyes, he looks to Zorua, asking if it's still able to keep going. Yipping its resolve, the small fox stares down Kirlia, and as Ash looks at the lunar avian as well, he reminds himself that while the task ahead of him may be daunting, it is one he always knew he would have to overcome if he is one day to surpass his father. He must defeat a legendary Pokemon. And that's where we'll leave things. What strategy can Ash employ for his final chance at a castle print? How will Caitlyn and Creselia's lifelong bond affect this final clash? And does Zorua stand a ghost of a chance on its own against a being of legend? Find out as the journey continues.